Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. I'm really happy to have you here with me today. So I was just checking the weather report, as I do every morning, and I saw that we are going to get down to 2 degrees tonight and that there is a risk of frost. If you have been with me for a while, then you may remember back last year we had a frost on June 10th. And the year before we had a frost on June 10th. Prior to that, I don't remember ever having frost in June. So those 2 years, I thought that maybe it was just a fluke. But apparently it's becoming a trend since it is the 6th today and we are going to get a frost. So we actually haven't had frost here for the last 4 weeks or 3 weeks or so. And I was pretty confident that we weren't going to get frost, but apparently my confidence was misplaced. So what is a gardener to do when they are going to get frost and they have hundreds of frost-sensitive plants already planted out in their garden? Let me show you. So there's a couple of things I can do to help my plants survive. The first is to pull out this frost blanket that I bought 2 years ago for just such a day as this and cover all of my plants. Here's what I'm dealing with. All of these along this row are pickling cucumbers, and they are very tiny, sad pickling cucumbers at this point. And with even a light frost, they could potentially be killed off. So I'm going to have to cover this whole row. This is mostly some summer squash. There's a couple summer squash up on the front part here, and then down there is all winter squash. Over here, all winter squash. And then I do have planted over this away. Over here, I have some corn that is also very frost sensitive. I'm not as concerned about the corn just because I just planted a few there. That is a popcorn that I've been trying to grow for the last couple of years unsuccessfully. If it gets killed off by the frost, it's not the end of the world. But losing all of the pickling cucumbers and the squash, not something I want to have happen. So I have all of my peas and brassicas here. I have onions and carrots and beans and a whole bunch of other stuff over here. And beans are very frost sensitive, but they haven't poked their heads out of the ground yet, so they'll be just fine. I also have potatoes in over here. They also have not come up yet, also frost sensitive. Generally, a light frost isn't going to kill off your potatoes, but it will damage some of the leaf growth, and I don't have any of that yet, so that's great. We have celery there. Celery can handle a little bit of light frost, and then my garlic down there can also handle some light frost. So basically at this point, all I really have to worry about are the pickling cucumbers here. So I had this idea that it's morning right now, it's around 8:30 in the morning, that I would get everything covered now. Man, that wind is even chilly. The wind is coming in out of the north today. I'm gonna get everything covered now because it is supposed to be fairly warm today. And I'm hoping that with the black weed barrier that they're in, combined with the frost blanket on top, I can warm up the soil even more, and hopefully some of that heat will radiate out during the night. So that's going to be done. Then over here, I have my high tunnel, which is fully planted out with all of my peppers and my tomatoes. And I'm pretty sure, oh, it's nice and warm in here actually, leave that door open, that since it's only going to be around 2 degrees, that the plants in here will be protected, one second, from any frost. But I am going to put a big tank of water down at the end, that's the north end, and fill it up with water. It's gonna get really warm in here today, and that water will heat up and then hopefully radiate a little bit of heat out on the north side of the greenhouse tonight, enough to keep it above freezing in here. I also have a heater as well that I'll put down at the north end. I usually, if I'm gonna lose plants when it gets cold this time of year, it's usually on the north end of the high tunnel. So we'll put some heat down there, and I think this will be just fine. We started out with a very warm early spring, snow off the ground early, and like I said, no frost. We haven't had any frost at all for the last 3 weeks. But the temperature, the overall temperatures the last 3 weeks have actually been fairly cool. So it's been a little bit of a tricky gardening season so far this year, but I have faith we're about to turn the corner because checking the weather forecast, all the temperatures daytime and nighttime are warming up starting in a couple of days. So that is good. I also have some petunias here. This I can just put right inside my greenhouse here. And then I also have some petunias in this wheelbarrow, which I can actually just move down and put it beside the greenhouse, and that should protect it enough. Actually, I won't put it on the north side. I'll put it over here on the south side, and that should be protected enough. Oh, you know what? I do have my daughter's little flower garden over here with some sensitive plants in it. These will definitely be hurt by the frost, as will these. So we'll cover these up. I'll probably just put a bucket right over top of these, and that will keep them safe because, yeah, these can't handle frost at all. I actually don't mind having such a short growing season because I can grow a lot of food for my family even though our growing season is as short as it is. We do sometimes get light frosts by the end of August. Actually, normally we do. But it certainly is a bit of a challenge, and I'm up for it. So let's get these guys over here. We'll start with our pickling cucumbers and get these covered. I'm hoping I have enough frost blanket to cover all of it. So we'll see. Before we do that though, I'll just quickly catch you up on where everything is in the garden because it is starting to look like a garden, and that's always really exciting. So I showed you, I think a couple of days ago, that my peas are all starting to come up and that I planted lettuce in along my peas. And the reason I do that is because I didn't have space anywhere else to put the lettuce, but also because these peas are going to shade the lettuce out a little bit. And lettuce is prone to bolting when it's really hot. And I've grown them this way before and they always seem to do really well. Over on this side, can you see those really sad onions that are planted in there along the edge of the peas? I have never been somebody who has been really invested in the idea of companion planting. I know about companion planting. I'm familiar with which plants tend to grow well together, but I am more the kind of gardener that goes on, I always say this, I'm kind of an intuitive gardener. I go on instinct. I plant things where I feel like planting them year to year. I rotate my where I plant things sometimes, and sometimes I don't. I plant plants together that I think will look nice together. And never in all my years of gardening have I ever noticed that when I have planted certain plants together that they've had a detrimental impact on each other. But I do know that it is not recommended to plant peas and onions together. There's a couple reasons for that. One of the main reasons is the fact that they are both quite heavy feeders and they can compete for nutrients in the ground. I'm not concerned about that because I amend my soil really heavily with really good compost that we make here on our farm every year. And if I notice my plants are looking a little hungry, I just give them a little bit more compost. So I'm not worried about planting my onions and my peas together from a nutritional standpoint or the fact that they'll be competing with nutrients. There have been some studies to show that they can have negative chemical impacts on each other. So the onions can release certain things that could impact the growth of the peas. And I'm not sure if it's vice versa or not, but definitely for the onions. And then there are even further studies to show that potentially the onions can impact the flavor of the peas. I don't know how much I really invest in that. So my rationale behind planting them like this mostly has to do with just a lack of space. I had nowhere else to put all of these extra onions, and I wanted the onions. These onions are really small, and they are going to remain really small until the peas are probably done, picked, and pulled out of the garden. So I just decided to go for it, and we'll see what's going to happen. And because these are extra onions, I already have my main crop of onions planted in a different area. And I only planted the peas for summer snacking. They're not for winter storage for us. A loss of either of them, or maybe not onions bulbing up as well, or the peas doing as well, is not going to make or break my garden this year. So that is why I am doing something that goes against all of the gardening companion planting rules. What we're using here is actually intended as a frost blanket for the garden. I bought this off of a friend who was moving, and didn't have any use for it. And I haven't even opened it, and I've owned it for a couple of years. So we're going to unroll it. It looks like there's lots of it there, so hopefully we'll have enough. I should probably grab some scissors though, because we're likely going to have to cut it. You know what? Maybe I won't cut this, and I'll just fold it over both of these rows here because it looks like it's big enough. I am so happy I'm going to have more than enough to cover all of the plants that need protection. That's fantastic. Dan just called me from town, and I was just FaceTiming him, and I just was showing him the frost blankets, and he said what we should do, because there's been, throughout the years, there's been different types of things that we could have used these for. Hail is a big one. I lost a large amount of my garden one year, about 5 or 6 years back, to hail. And then of course the frost issues. But he was saying it would be kind of neat if we could put these on like a reel and just have them covered. And then we could just pull them out really quickly if we needed to. In the case of hail, sometimes there's very little warning. We've been out here when the hail's been coming down, covering everything up with sheets and blankets and stuff before. And I think that's kind of a cool idea. I'm sure big commercial farms that have risks like that probably do that. But I'm just so happy with the amount of cloth that was on this reel that I have, because I'm going to be able to cover everything, which is fantastic. So when it comes to crops that can handle a little bit of frost, it doesn't mean that the frost doesn't damage them and can potentially put them under stress and kind of slow down their growth a little bit. So I think just for the heck of it, and since I have it available, I am going to cover, I'm not going to worry about the onions, they'll be just fine, but I think I will cover up my celery and probably these little pot marigolds or calendula as well, because they're fairly frost sensitive. My sheep are free ranging along here, and they, no, get out, back you go, back out. Now I know where they're getting in, back out. Okay, so this is something that I have been needing to do for a long time, is put a fence from the root cellar down to this corner of this fence here, because the rest of the garden is all fenced in farm fencing that you can see there. But we still have a little section of this, which of course this is just barbed wire fencing, and they can go right underneath it. And for whatever reason, even though they have an entire field of gorgeous grass over here, they want to come up into the garden and eat the grass over here. Sheep, honestly. Good thing they're so cute. This issue, well, there's a few reasons. Number one is I have an electric movable hot wire pen for the sheep to go into. But because we have such a small flock of sheep, we've been able to free range them around without them causing any issues whatsoever. We just have our yard up here that's around the house is all fenced and gated, and then the garden here. Those are the only kind of two spaces that we don't want to have the sheep in. So I think what we would be better off doing actually is just continue to let them free range and put a temporary fence up along here, because it's not a huge area to have to do that. And I probably have enough panels. This is my potato patch, or one of my potato patches, by the way, if you missed it the last time I showed this. So we just have this mulched with sedge grass hay, and it works really well to retain the moisture, which potatoes really love. Oh, look, yay! So this is my flower bed that's running along the bottom of my garden. And we have zinnia coming up here. We have some cosmos coming up here. We have beautiful sunflowers. This is going to be such a beautiful backdrop to my garden, this bed here. And then with this view in behind it, it's gonna look so beautiful come summertime. My garden is on a bit of a slope, and so when you stand up here, you'll still be able to see the gorgeous view in above this beautiful wall of flowers, but it's gonna just give this gorgeous splash of color down here, and I cannot wait. I plant flowers in my garden, in my vegetable garden, everywhere. There's flowers actually in all of these beds. Oh, let's see. Do we have any baby apples starting to form on this tree? I was concerned about pollination because we had so much rain when the flowers came out and there wasn't a lot of bees around. And I think I told you this, but I actually lost my beehives. I had 2 beehives and I lost them back in November to wasps. We had a massive wasp issue and they went in and killed my hives within about 24 hours. I was just heartbroken, and not having bees on my property is really hard for me. We're actually setting up some swarm traps up in the forest because we do have some honeybees, probably from swarms of mine over the years, that we have seen around. So I'm hoping to be able to catch a swarm because not having bees is tough. Oh, I can see, hang on. Does look like there's some little apples forming here. So that does mean we got some pollination. Look at how beautiful our comfrey is looking. So what I do, I like to let this bloom just because the bumblebees absolutely love comfrey flowers. And then once it's bloomed for a few weeks, I'll actually just stomp it down around my fruit trees, and then that acts as a natural mulch and it will come up again, usually 2 times, at least 2 or 3 times throughout the summer. I'll do that. And then I'll actually just cut it down in the fall. We are going to make at least 1 or 2 more rhubarb recipes before the rhubarb season is over. So I'm just going to pick a couple things of rhubarb. Oh, this is what I do with my rhubarb leaves, by the way, is I just use it to mulch around my trees. Rhubarb leaves are toxic to both animals and humans, but they make a great mulch. Oh, all this rain has made for such an awesome rhubarb crop this year. Probably going to can a little bit more rhubarb. I prefer to can it than freeze it. It does freeze really nicely, but my freezers are so packed with meat pretty much year round that I prefer to put it up in the pantry. I am so happy because this is a haskap bush, or otherwise known as a honeyberry, and there are tons of beautiful berries on it. I make a honeyberry sunjam when they're ready, and I just love them. I wish that I had planted 50 of them at least about 4 years ago. It takes about 4 years for them to really get going because it is a berry that we absolutely love. When we're harvesting, I'll show you because I know a lot of people aren't familiar with it. Tastes a little bit like a raspberry and a blueberry and a little bit of strawberry, like a hint of strawberry. So good. I feel good about knowing that my plants are protected and the sun is coming out, so hopefully it will warm the ground up a lot. So we are going to make a recipe. I was going to make one with cream cheese, but I have decided to make this one, which was sent by, excuse me, Joanna. Thank you, Joanna. And this one's Big Pan Rhubarb Pie. And the reason that I decided on this recipe is because we are having some company over, so I need to make a larger recipe, and this one was called Big Pan. So I know it's going to be big enough. So this is a 9x13 pan. We need to make a shortbread crust and then the filling, and then we are going to top it with meringue. So it should be very delicious. So for our shortbread crust, we're going to use 1 cup of butter. And this recipe called for 2 cups of flour plus 2 tablespoons. So what I'm going to do instead, because it didn't have any sweetening in it, is I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of icing sugar instead of the couple of tablespoons of extra flour. And we're going to mix that all together. I love shortbread crusts so much. They're so easy and they taste so good. So now we are going to push this down into our 9x9 pan. And then we're going to bake this at 350 for 10 minutes. Into the oven. So we're going to take 6 egg yolks, which I've already separated out here. And then into this, we're going to add 2 cups of sugar and mix that up well. We have 1 cup of whipping cream, 1/4 cup of flour, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and we'll mix that together, and 5 cups of chopped rhubarb. And then this we're going to pour on top of our crust when it comes out of the oven. All right, now into this goes our filling. And back in the oven for an hour. All right, friends, we need to make our meringue topping. So we have our 6 egg whites that I had separated out from the yolks that we used in the filling. And that is our timer for the filling. So we're gonna beat these till they have stiff peaks. 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Okay, we have yummy topping now. Okay, now we bake this for 15 more minutes until it is nice and golden. And there we have it. How pretty. Is it all set? Yep. Looks pretty good. Oh my goodness, that was still very hot. This is delicious. What a lovely, quick way to make a delicious pie without having to make pie crust, because we all know that pie crust is not my area of expertise. My kids just tried the pie and thought it was absolutely fantastic. So I thought we would end today's video actually tomorrow morning and see how the garden fared with the frost. So I'll see you guys bright and early. Good morning, friends. Are you ready? Let's go check it out. I came out onto the deck a little bit earlier, so it's around 6 a.m. right now, and I could see my breath in the air. So here goes. So the sun has already been out for a few hours. So it's possible even if there was frost, it's already melted, but we should be able to tell by looking at the plants in the garden whether anything got hit. So what happens when frost hits a plant is that the water in the cells expands, and then when the sun hits it and it melts, it kind of explodes the cell walls. I'm no scientist, but that's kind of my basic understanding of it. And then that's why the plant limps out and it kills the leaves. So usually by the time the sun comes out and warms things, you can tell whether you have frost damage on your plants or not, even if you can't see the frost anymore. Lots of dew on the grass. These guys look all right. So far, so good. Yeah, we got frost. Darn. This is frozen. Ice. Oh dear. I did find a big, fat, happy toad in the garden. There you go, buddy. So yeah, definitely got some frost, but so far the plants look okay. I'm gonna leave these here because it's supposed to frost again tonight and then it warms up. It's definitely an open up the high tunnel day. It is just beautiful blue, gorgeous skies out there. As you can see, it is only around 10 degrees, actually 7 degrees Celsius in here. So it definitely got cool in here last night. Look at the drops on those leaves. So this is caused by excess water in the plant, and then it gets rid of the excess water through its leaves like that. It's called respiration. Very, very glad I put those frost blankets on. Glad I closed the high tunnel up. I do all throughout the summer. I close the high tunnel at night just because it always cools off pretty significantly at night here, even if it's really hot during the day. Like I said, we're supposed to get frost again tonight, so everything is going to be covered up again. But then it looks like there's a shift in the weather and we are going to be in the clear. Thank goodness. I hope that you enjoyed spending some time with me, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.